Hi, this is Bruce Vilanch, and I am on Perched on Hollywood Blvd.
Hey, what's going on, everybody out there in Hollywood land? I am your host, Lee Walker. The only claim to fame I have was I had a scene with Adrian Brody once, and I never looked back. I am here with six-time Emmy Award winner, Bruce Vilanch. Bruce, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm grand. I'm carrying on. You know, it's day 492 of quarantine. I've changed my name to Quarantina Turner. I'm just typing away and zooming, streaming, watching old porn. It's falling in love with porn stars long dead.
Those were the days. I want to thank you for coming on the show and speaking with me today. It's a real honor to have you on.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Pro wrestling, huh?
That's where I got my start in writing, was pro wrestling. Interviewed a lot of great guys in there, and now I'm venturing off into Hollywood. And here we are. Bruce, I got to ask, you went to Ohio State University for journalism, theater. When did you know that you wanted to be involved with writing?
As early as I can remember. Writing, not so much, but performing, absolutely. Making faces in front of the mirror and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I was also fascinated by show business. I don't know. It was probably, it was not the earliest days of television, but early days of television. And so that brought a great deal of glamour into your living room. And I was like glued to all that. My mother said that I taught myself how to read by looking at the movie ads in the newspaper. So I knew all those I knew all those words like stupendous and magical and all that before I actually knew what they meant. I could read them.
Yeah.
So I was always and I was enabled by my parents, who recognized that I was happy doing that, so they encouraged it. They were just afraid that I wouldn't be able to make a living at it. So they kind of when I appeared to show some writing talent a few years later, they a fertile imagination. I mean, fecund imagination. I mean, really scary imagination. They encouraged me to write things down, hoping I would get rid of them that way. And so they kept saying, "Oh, well, you could be a writer. You could, you could." Newspapers will never go out of style. Little did they know. Right. Who knew? But so I was encouraged in both of those areas. And then I was a child actor, and my mother would schlep me into New York because we were in North Jersey, and she would schlep me into New York, and I would audition for things, and I got some stuff, commercials, but I was never a child star. Or we'd be having this conversation in rehab, but they don't do well, child stars. As a rule, they don't do well. They don't. There's Shirley Temple and there's everybody else. Everybody else is a disaster area, and she was an ambassador to Ghana. She wound up at the UN. So, that was when it started.
All right, cool. And I mean, you bring up the whole child celebrity thing, and then ending up in rehab, and the first thing that clicked in my mind was I'm thinking VH1 Celebrity Rehab and everything, and
right, yeah.
I mean, unfortunately,
a nightmare descent into booze and pills. I didn't have that.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing, though.
It's fine, yes.
Ohio State, you graduate, and you go into the working world. You start out as a writer. When did it become a realization for you that you were meant for more than newspapers and, these other attributes in the business?
Well, it didn't happen like that. It wasn't like I received the calling. It was always what I was doing. I was by the time I was there, I was already a pro with an equity card, and I was doing a lot of theater on the side. And when I got out of Ohio State, I'd already had 2 newspaper jobs in the summer, the Miami Herald and the Detroit Free Press. So I knew what that was about. So I think, well, I can do this while continuing the acting. Where do I want to do it? So I applied around the country to different newspapers, and Chicago Tribune gave me a job. So I moved to Chicago, and while I was in Chicago, everything happened. I met Bette Midler and began writing for her, and then as a result, began writing for a lot of other people. And I was acting and all of that. So it all kind of coalesced in 5 years. And at that point, I moved to LA because Bet's dresser had a brother who had started a group called the Manhattan Transfer. And we put their act together, and they got a summer television series. And so I came out here to write that show in 1970, before you were born.
Sorry.
And I stayed, and then I stayed lucky. It was the end of the variety show era, and I was writing variety shows, but they morphed into award shows and tributes and spectacles. And I was writing for a lot of people when they were for their stand-up act, and so it was easy to transfer that to writing for people on those kinds of shows. So I had what is called a career.
Yeah, and we see that early on, like you brought up Bette Midler, and one of the first things that I think of is the very last Johnny Carson episode when she sings "You Made Me Watch," and you wrote that.
I wrote it with Mark Shaman, who wrote Hairspray, the musical, which I later was in.
Yeah.
But Mark had been was her music director had been for since then, actually, but he was before that even. After Barry Manilow, Mark, there were a couple of others, and then Mark came in for the long haul. So the three of us wrote it together. We decided we were going to make it like a Bette Midler spot on the Carson show. She had done, I think, 27 spots on Carson, and they all had a sort of formula where she would come out and she would sing something, a big up-tempo thing, and then talk to him, and then sing something quiet and romantic. So that's what we did. Only we added that as a piece of special material in the middle of the thing. And she won an Emmy for it.
Yes.
She won. And it's a category that they don't give anymore for. It's called variety performance. Although the Emmys being what they are, they'll probably reinstitute it any minute now, because they had like 80 categories. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah.
You brought up some other things in there, like the end of the variety era, which we know you wrote, the Donnie and Marie show, the very short-lived Brady Bunch variety hour. Partridge Family had theirs.
They turned it down.
The 70s were a wild time.
Partridge Family was offered the gig first, but
oh really?
Yeah, because they were a performing family in their show.
Yeah,
they weren't really, but they were a performing family in the show, and so there would have been a natural transition for them to play a family that got a TV show and was living in Hollywood, and but they didn't want to do it. I mean, they had long since broken up, and I don't think Shirley Jones wanted to do it, and David Cassidy certainly didn't want to do it. Not at that point. And so Fred Silverman, who was running the network, he ran all three of the networks at one point or another. I was waiting for him to run PBS. That would have been Pink Lady and Jeff on Masterpiece Theater, but he never got to that. But this was his idea. He liked hosts. He pioneered Sonny and Cher and Tony Orlando and Dawn and all of those host combos that were very popular. And so he shifted over to the Brady Bunch because the Brady kids had toured. They played state fairs and things with an act. So and Florence, of course, was a Broadway pro. The only one who was not at home in the thing was Robert Reed. And but he said, okay. I don't think he was doing much else. And he said, okay, I'll do that. So we did this ridiculous show about this family that lives in a big house at Malibu with a pool that has water ballerinas in it, and a lot of guest stars. That was variety television, and then it kind of sort of went away.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's ironic to bring up the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, and you're literally in a Alice shirt. So
I'm in a yes. Go ask Alice.
Yeah.
Ann B. Davis, Ann B. And this is a guy named Glenn Hansen, who's an artist who used to do caricatures of me when I was writing a column for The Advocate, which is the New York Times of homosexuality. And he made me look gorgeous and all of these things. And he makes everybody look fabulous. I mean, Ann B. never looked quite like this. I mean, she looks like Ellen, actually. She
really does.
Ellen on a good day before the hair color.
I'm actually at my man cave right now, and I'm looking over to my left, and I have a Star Wars section. The Star Wars Holiday Special. How did that come about?
Well, it's funny because I'm writing a book now about how I wrote the worst shows in television that survived. And these are the ones we're talking about. Star Wars happened because George Lucas was about to start The Empire Strikes Back, and Star Wars had been released 18 months earlier, and it was, of course, a phenomenon. But other than Jaws, it was the second blockbuster, really, after Jaws. There wasn't the franchise culture where you would see, you'd go past the theater and it would say Star Wars 3, Jaws 4, and you'd think, oh, it's the ball scores. Or Star Wars 4, Jaws 3, audience nothing. That was my joke in those days. But so he wasn't sure that the public was going to run to the Empire, and because it wasn't going to be released for another year. So he needed to kind of fan the flames. Just stir it, stoke it. And so he had 10 stories, and 6 of which he was going to turn into movies, and the other 4 he siphoned off on other things. And he had 1 story left, and he sold the story to CBS as a variety show. But I always believed that he thought it was going to be a variety show in the style of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, where they created a musical from the ground up of Cinderella, using the Cinderella story. And Julie Andrews played Cinderella, and it was a cast of all-stars. And I think he thought that was going to happen. And he didn't reckon with what happened, which was it became a regular kind of variety special, full of sketches, and people jobbed in to cross-promote their shows on CBS, and all stuff that was done to serve the guest stars. That was never what he had in mind. And once he discovered that what was happening, he just kind of left town. He had enough. But unfortunately, had he known that this is what it was going to become, he probably wouldn't have sold them the story that he sold them, which featured the Wookiees as lead characters. And the unfortunate part of that is that the Wookiees speak no known language. When they do speak, they sound like fat people having orgasms. I mean, trust me, I know. So they just thought you had to hang a story on this. And of course, the other thing was that they couldn't speak. And at the time, network television never used subtitles, because at the time, people didn't go to the movies that had subtitles, except a small group of people who were interested in art films. And the irony there is that the latter 3 Star Wars, the current Star Wars movies, are all subtitled. I mean, I don't think Lupita Nyong'o has said a word in English in the last couple of movies, because she's playing somebody from some other planet who doesn't speak English. And so the audience, of course, has gotten to accept it. And now, of course, with closed captioning and streaming and everything you watch on Netflix or Amazon, you can also subtitle it. So you can watch people with the thickest Yorkshire accents talking, and you can understand what they're saying. This was not the case in 1978. So we had to bring in stars to interpret what they were saying. So we had Art Carney as a traveling intergalactic Tupperware salesman, talking to Chewbacca's wife, Mala, about and translating what she had to say to keep the plot going. And so it was kind of a mess. And I think that all this was supposed to. He had started out, I think, writing a story about Boba Fett, and he wound up doing an animated piece on Boba Fett, which was inserted into the show. It was something I think the little kid, Itchy, an Itchy Wookiee, saw through his virtual reality helmet, his dream machine. And it's what basically survived for Star Wars fans from the show. But here's what happened. It aired. It It got decent reviews. It got terrific numbers, and it went away. And then years later, the internet came in. And a generation of kids who had grown up watching the Star Wars movies on VHS found this thing on the internet that was also Star Wars. And they watched it, and by then Star Wars had become a religion. And they watched it and they said, George, how could you do this? Now, he'd taken his name off of it, but they still knew that he'd sold the rights, obviously. It was Lucasfilm. How could you do this? You betrayed us. And it got very, very dark. There were death threats, and there were, I mean, it was awful. I mean, these people, you know, zealots and fundamentalists of all stripes are crazy. And Star Wars fundamentalists are as crazy as, you know, jihadists. And they be issuing fatwas on everybody. And that's what happened. The internet brought it back. And every time he does another project, it surfaces again. Oddly enough, the Brady Bunch Variety Hour has suffered the same fate, because the Bradys have never gone away. And every time there's some new Brady thing, it bubbles up to the surface like something in the La Brea tar pits. And I begin getting calls, dude, I'm watching this show. The guy, your name is on it. And the dad from the Brady Bunch is doing a drag routine as Carmen Miranda, which we got him to do. You know. We will make him funny one way or another.
You got to do what you got to do, right?
Oh, you know, Woody Allen said that when he was on the Gary Moore show, and Gary Moore and Durward Kirby were not funny people, and every sketch he'd write for them, he would, at the top, he would say, Durward and Gary enter wearing dresses. And when the sketch didn't get any laughs, he would say, well, you wouldn't wear the dresses. It would have been hilarious if you'd been in wearing the dresses.
Yeah.
So I said, let's put Bob in some kind of ridiculous drag. And we were doing a big carnival finale, I think. And so I said, let's make him Carmen Miranda. It was either that or we're doing a salute to Hollywood greats, something like that. And the least likely thing for him to do would be Carmen Miranda. But I've done that to a few other people. Andy Williams also. He loved doing it. In his live show in Branson, Missouri, at the Moon River Theater. How about that?
You've been able to write so many jokes for so many years for so many actors and actresses like Roseanne Barr, Billy Crystal, Rosie O'Donnell, Robin Williams, one of my favorite actors. What's it like to be able to work with all of these actors and actresses? And when you're writing these jokes, how do you take in mind their aspect of comedy?
Well, it's called due diligence, basically. I mean, you do your homework, you watch them. And I always compare it with Bob Mackie making a dress. You know, he's not going to make the same dress for Queen Latifah that he made for Cher, because they're two distinct body types. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and you're not going to put a black woman in green colors or purple colors, because they tend to get lost in the dress. So they're brighter colors. You can put Cher in something subdued, and she will still come forward because she's palish. Mm-hmm. She's Armenian, but she's pale. So the idea is, it's all custom. It's custom couture, and it's kind of the same. You know, I love that show, Say Yes to the Dress, where, you know, a bride who weighs 400 pounds wants to wear the mermaid cut. You know. And with a low cut, yeah, and she's got like 92-inch jugs, and she wants, but this is what she wants, because it's a glamorous look, and you can't tell her that it doesn't look so glamorous on her. This is exactly what it's like writing material for people. And they'll say, I want to do a joke about it, and you're like, I don't think you can do that joke. Or more than that, if you really do your homework well, you won't bring them stuff that is not appropriate to who they are when they're on stage. That's why the hardest people to write for are on those award shows, people who don't have a stage persona. People like Johnny Depp and Keanu Reeves. Well, Johnny Depp has created a persona, a talk show character that he plays. It's Johnny Depp, you know, the hippest guy in the room, mm-hmm. and eccentric and flamboyant, and And he's not quite that in real life, but that is the character that he is put forth on the world stage. Now, Keanu is quiet, soft-spoken, none of, and we mistakenly tried to get him to do a Bill and Ted routine on the Oscars. That was a mistake, because when it's a mistake when somebody does a character to have them do the material and they're not in character. And that was on me. That was my bad. But he has forgiven me, and I just better not steal his dog. That's all.
You speak of the Academy Awards. You wrote for them like a really long time, from 1989 to 2014, and various hosts like Billy Crystal, Whoopi Goldberg, David Letterman. What's it like to just sit in a room and do all this writing for these shows? And how much is there, changing of what you're doing before it starts?
Well, it's different for each host.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the hosts who have their own television shows have a staff of writers, and they bring them over to the Oscar show. And so they generally are only interested in writing for their boss. And so everything has to kind of go through a committee, and it can be a little tedious. And of course, they trust their writers, and you're just kind of sitting there saying, I think that could work, but I don't think that will work, or here's why you can't do that, or whatever. And then you wind up writing the rest of the show and contributing to what the host does. When it's somebody like Steve Martin or Whoopi Goldberg, or Anne Hathaway and James Franco, although he hired a staff of his own. He had Seth Rogen come in, not Seth Rogen, Judd Apatow, with a bunch of writers from Seth Rogen movies, mm-hmm. who work on it. But when you work with somebody who doesn't have, that's in Billy Crystal, for example, then you really are, you sit in a room every day and figure out where they are in the show, what they follow, what they have to introduce, if there's a theme. We had a producer who did 17 of them, Gil Cates, who always had a theme of the evening, whether you liked it or not. And you figure out what it's going to be, and you kind of put a playbook together of what we will say at this point and what you'll say at that point. In addition to the opening stuff, I mean, with Billy, the opening stuff is like a 20-minute special.
Yeah.
It grew. The medley was first, and then the movie came. The movie was because the year of the English Patient, nobody had seen the movies. Had we known the English Patient was going to win like 9 awards, we would have written a lot more about that. But the biggest picture that year was Star Wars, the reissue of Episode 4, A New Hope, and that came out. And so we put Billy in all of these movies because it kind of would familiarize the audience with what was actually being awarded that night. Anyway, so on the night itself, no matter who the host is, I'm on stage in the little host room off stage left, and we are plotting as we go along to see if there's a place where we can do jokes, where it would change what we've written. And that started when Jack Palance, we have to thank for that, because he came out, a year Billy was hosting, Jack was nominated for City Slickers, which was Billy's movie, and he won and came out, and he was profane, and he did one-arm push-ups, and it was crazy. And because they have a relationship already, Billy could then come out and, as my mother would say, make blutter from him for the rest of the show. Just one joke after another. And so that became a kind of template, and everybody wanted to do a thing like that because they want to feel like they're in the moment, and it's a live party, and there's spontaneity. Everything isn't canned, because generally everything is canned except what the winners have to say, and that is often where you get the moment, as with Jack Palance, to come up with something to comment on what they just did. Because a lot of people behave idiotically when they win these things. They're like, especially now, because it's become an industry in itself. I mean, the campaigns and what goes on. It's like it's right up there with what Joe Biden's doing now. It's very tough. I mean, so finally when the night comes, and it's like, and you won. Oh my God, I won! So they get up there and they just like completely forget what they were going to do and do something ridiculous. We of course we pray for that. If we don't get that, it's better you get somebody who really has prepared and really knows what they're doing and has something good to say. The worst is when you get somebody who's just up there hemming and hawing and doing a laundry list of thank yous and all of that. But I've said too much.
Yeah, and then the light fades down on them and goes to commercial break.
Oh, worse, the band comes up. They get the bums rush in rhythm.
Yeah. I've seen plenty of that when I watch those. You're very versatile with your writing, from TV.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. From TV, the variety hour stuff, newspapers. You've also helped in writing with songs as well, and we see that with Diana Ross, Bette Midler, and the Village People. They had a hit, "Sex Over the Phone."
Sex Over the Phone, yeah, that was mine, and I had some disco hits with Jacques Morali, who wrote the Village People stuff. That and an Eartha Kitt. We had a big hit with Eartha called "Where Is My Man," to which there is still no answer. But that was a big hit all over the world. And "Sex Over the Phone" was banned by the BBC. That's how big a hit it was. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Incendiary. But mostly, I mean, I did write a lot of parody lyrics with people. But those were like a few of the original lyrics that I wrote for things. And I would write more. And at one point, I was very ambitious. I was going to write. I called all my songwriter friends, and I said, let's get together. How do we do this? And some of them said, well, you have to write a lyric, and I'll put music to it. And I thought, write a lyric without music. Gee, that's a whole other thing. And that's what real lyricists do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Oscar Hammerstein sat down and wrote "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning" and gave it to Richard Rodgers. And, I mean, there was a joke about, oh God, Jerome Kern Jerome Kern's wife and Oscar Hammerstein's wife, and Old Man. Somebody was singing "Old Man River," and she said, "My husband wrote that." And Oscar Hammerstein's wife said, "No, your husband wrote da 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 da. My husband wrote Old Man River, that old man river." So I turned out I was not too adept at doing that from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
And I was better in a room, which is the other way that songwriters write when they collaborate, is that you sit in a room and the guy who writes the music is at the piano or playing her guitar, and you are writing the lyric, and it happens together. So there are two distinct ways of doing it. So I did some songs like that. The ones I wrote, the disco stuff, actually, Jacques he was living in Paris, and he would send me the track of the song
mm-hmm.
and the title, and say, "There, here it is, darling. Sex Over the Phone. That's the title." And and I would hear in the track where "sex over the phone" where that would happen. So I had to write the lyric around that. So it was perhaps a third way of writing a song. So it was not pure, but I cashed the check. What can I tell you? And I got to record. We did a demo for Eartha. She was concerned because she had never sung to a track and to a disco thing before. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'd written it in her voice, and so she wanted to know, how it would sound. So I did a demo. And I want a man, and that was how Eartha spoke. She sang things, and then I called her and I said, "Did you get it?" She said, "Yes." I said, "How did you like it?" She said, "It's very good. If I find you doing an impression of me anywhere, I will kill you."
And here we are.
Exactly, here we are.
When did you come out with your distinctive look with the red glasses? I mean,
it wasn't any one moment.
No.
It's kind of built over the years. My mother was very fastidious, and she dressed me, and I was always kind of a heavy kid, and I was never comfortable in real clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I I became a hippie in the 70s, in the early 70s, and so that was all about T-shirts and beards, like yours. Only I had one quite, and I had a lot of hair, and so that was about loose clothing and informality and stuff. And so the T-shirt became a thing because it was also so comfortable. And I used to dress it up. I would have a shirt over that would be open so you could read the joke on the shirt. So and I said my layered look, I called it. I've recently been layered. And then when I moved to California, I discovered I'm living in a place where you can go anywhere dressed like that. And nobody really gives a rat's ass. So that became the look. And then I always had glasses and I always had a beard. And then I did a picture with Jane Fonda called The Morning After in the early 80s about a woman who wakes up in bed with a dead body, and she's an alcoholic and she's not sure. She may have killed him. She doesn't know because she was in the blackout. And it's her finding out the truth. And one of the things she does is she comes to the bar, my bar, where she's a habitué, and I cash her check and we have a scene together. And it was Sidney Lumet directed it. It was the only picture he ever made in Hollywood. And he said to me, when he cast me, he said, "This is the only picture I'm ever going to make in Hollywood. I want everybody to be blonde." To me, LA is just blonde. And so I said, "You're paying for it. Point me to the bottle." So I went blonde about 40 years ago, and I have never looked back. And it just gets blonder. So that element happened. And then when I was on Hollywood Squares,
yes,
I was wearing glasses, and Whoopi and I were doing this thing where we would wear different glasses every day. And so I laid in, got a lot of glasses done, and then I discovered that if my prescription changed, and I found out that I would have to take a second mortgage on the house in order to fill all these glasses with the new prescription. Yeah. So I sat on red. Sally Jesse Raphael, who was a talk show host who wore it.
Yes, I remember.
And so I said, okay, I got the red glass marker. Because Elton had all this spec, mink lined and diamond.
Oh, yeah.
And Robin, Robin was a real fop, and he had a lot of glasses, but he didn't wear them on television. He just wore them in real life. And so I thought, okay, red, and they've been red, and I find frames that I like, but they're always, I have a big head, so they're big frames, and these are I love these. These are like Harold Lloyd used to wear in the silent movies, the guy who hung off the clock tower.
Yeah.
Famous movie. They're almost like owl's eye, and so I found them in an old prop house. He didn't have them in red. I had them in red, but so all of that happened to create what you see before you. So It's not like it's not like sex where spontaneously the sperm meets the egg and boom, we have a Kardashian.
Earlier we spoke about the Variety Hour era with the Brady Bunch. Later on, flash forward, you have An Evening with Friends with Florence Henderson.
Oh yeah, well, I had started doing an act in Chicago. I would get up. There was a club called Punchinello's, which was an after-hours club, not late after hours, but people would come after the theater, and so around 11 o'clock, or midnight, I would go on every night, and I would review the news of the day, and it kind of became an act. And I did it at a club in New York that was famous in its day called Reno Sweeney. That was down in the High Village. And it was limousines out the door. It was such a bizarre scene. And so I always continued doing that. And then after Hollywood Squares, when you're on television every night, you get lots of requests. I wrote a book, and I toured in a one-man show and stuff like that. And the remnants of that, Florence was doing her show, and I wrote some material for Florence for her act. And she said, "Why don't we do a show together? Because we work together, but the contrast is so immense But she's so Mrs. America, and I am so Missed America. So we did this show in a few places, and we had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I mean, by the time I became a kid, the Brady Bunch was obviously reruns, but my dad lived still back in that era. To this day, I go up to his house at 7 p.m. First thing I'll find on is the Munsters.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And then, and then it's the Brady.
Is he watching like Antenna or one of those channels? Me TV?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
I found myself tuning in.
You just brought up a bunch of the stuff I was actually going to talk about. You the book Platinum that you had written.
Platinum was a Broadway musical. It's my luminous flop, but I had a great time doing it.
And then another one, you brought up your one-man show, the Bruce Vilanch, Almost Famous.
Almost Famous, yeah.
Yep. Another great thing. Again, a lot of versatile in your writing, from the comedy and the one-man show. And then we see later on, you start getting requested to play as yourself, like in 2001, The Simpsons with the Pokemon episode. And
that's right. And season 11, if you're keeping score.
Yes.
That was great. The Simpsons was the greatest thing about it was they give you a trunk full of Simpsons swag that really? They don't sell. Yes, I have to this day. I have the trunk, and it's full of things like Homer Simpson's bowling ball, and it's got the traveling case. It says Homer on it with and then the ball itself looks like a huge egg yolk. Only striated, with like clouds going through it. And it has no holes. It has 3 red dots and a magic marker thing that says, drill here. And it's a prized possession. It's a prized possession. But the day I recorded, as I recall, or maybe it was Elizabeth Taylor was recording also. She was they were going to have Maggie speak. And he said, Gaga, I think, or Goo Goo, or something like that. And Elizabeth Taylor came and did the voice. And she got the same trunk. Because we used to do AIDS benefits. And I said, I said to Simpsons, did they give you the trunk? She said, oh my God, the trunk. The trunk is fabulous. All of my grandchildren want the stuff in the trunk. I'm not letting any of it go.
I had no idea.
She had grandchildren. No one thinks of her as a grandmother, but she had a whole bunch of grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
And because she had 5 kids. She actually gave birth to 3 of them, and then they adopted 2 others. But and they all had children, so she was like surrounded by kids.
Oh,
as she got older.
Yeah, I can't imagine having 1, to be honest with you, let alone 5.
That's cool. Things you don't think about when you're actually doing it.
You had a season 3 and season 5 in RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah. How
was that show, and how did that occur, and how'd you end up getting on?
Well, I'd written for RuPaul when he had his first TV show on VH1. The RuPaul show was a talk show, and his managers, Fenton Bailey and Randy Barbado, were friends of mine. And we went to Vegas, and RuPaul did a show at the Sahara. He headlined. And then that kind of calmed down. And when they came back with us, and they said, would you like you come on and be the comedy mentor? See how that works out. And then you can be a judge, maybe, if you want to be a judge. And so I did it. I did the comedy mentoring thing twice. And it keeps getting rerun and rerun and rerun. What was interesting to me was when they started the show, there were the 2 kinds of drag queens. There were the ones who were gorgeous. Who had every detail down. But never spoke. They lip synced everything, and they just looked great. And then there were the other ones who had characters that they had created and would work clubs and dealt with the audience, and they were comics. And so they were funny. The other ones were lost at sea. You couldn't compete. So I said, you can't put them in the same category. because it's all with the comic will win. I mean, like, you can't touch Bianca Del Rio. Bianca Del Rio was hilarious and has been for years. So then the next time I did it, I realized that the show it was a huge success. But more interestingly, the drag queen sitting at home watching it realized what I had always been saying: you have to be able to do everything to win that show. You have to be funny. You have to be great looking. You have to have a character. You have to be able to make your own clothes. You have to be able to live in a motel for 2 weeks, and not talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So the winners who emerge from that show are super queens. They can do it all. And so so the second time I was a comedy mentor, it was like one after another. They all had, people who you expected to have no kind of routine at all were hysterically funny. And it was then they were all kind of competing on the same page. And I mean, that is the driest, most analytical discussion of RuPaul's Drag Race that you will ever hear until there's a course taught somewhere or somebody does a TED talk about it.
You also have some, roles in some movies that came later on, like 2008, Don't Mess with the Zohan.
It was one day.
Yeah. But
it was Adam Sandler who didn't like the end of his movie, and he decided he wrote a new ending, and we had to shoot it in one day. And it was me and George Takei, we played a couple in Greenwich Village.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave Matthews is a terrorist. And
yeah.
And he, for some reason, has kidnapped a couple of cages of beagle puppies. I guess they're worth a lot of money. I can't remember what the plot really was there. But he's blown up and into our living room. He comes through our roof with the puppies. And George and I are just sitting on the couch. And like nothing has happened, we start talking to him. And he, of course, he's terribly homophobic, which is like a strain of that movie is people's homophobia, because the Zohan is he doesn't care. He's like woman crazy, but Alec Mapa and all, there are all these queens around him because he's a hairdresser. Mm-hmm. And so this is like Dave Matthews, it's his ultimate nightmare to be surrounded by gay guys. Yeah. Especially, I mean, George, an old Asian guy and a fat Jewish queen. And here we are, here he is in the midst of this. And it was very, very funny ending. And because it's an Adam Sandler movie, I get people who had no idea who I was. Well, my God, I saw you in that Adam Sandler picture. And Lainey Kazan is a good friend of mine who's in it. And of course, we see her bare ass. So you immense tuchus. I say, is that? She said, "Are you kidding? I had a double, quadruple is what you had in that." Whoever she was.
It's funny with Adam Sandler. One of his main assistant directors that he used for a while, his name was Murphy Okino. His parents and my parents are neighbors, and he just spent his whole summer here in my hometown. And
where are you?
I'm in Oswego, New York, right on Lake Ontario.
Yeah, right.
And he actually gave me a ton of movie scripts, a bunch of Adam Sandler's, The Simpsons, all these other, all these cool scripts and everything. I'm kind of sitting here, I'm like, what am I gonna do with all these? There's a I'm keeping them because my man cave room, I have like a lot of memorabilia and stuff besides just the wrestling. I got a Star Wars section. I got a Bryan Cranston section with his shirts from Breaking Bad. I got some Ron Perlman stuff on the wall, like his hoodie from Sons of Anarchy. I actually had to look. I apologize, Ron, if you ever actually listen to this. I'm sorry.
You might. I don't know. We did the Ice Pirates together, Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
That was the movie I was in with Angelica Houston, and they were I think they were sort of a couple in that movie. Sort of. She was an Amazonian, and he was a space pirate. He was a raider.
Yeah.
But, so I've known him since then. And Bryan Cranston's a friend, and I have a whole bunch of shirts from Breaking Bad, from the Pest Control Company and Heidegger, a whole bunch of the Heidegger shirts.
Yeah. I got a couple of the button downs. I got a white one.
Wow, that's serious stuff.
And then I got a purple one, and I actually found a promo photo of him in that purple shirt, and it's actually with because they're both in shadow boxes, and I've got that photo in with it with the certificate and everything, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of all this stuff, and to collect, I might end up on an episode of Hoarders one day, but
it's I've always been this close to being on a Hoarders episode. I have a lot of stuff, and what saved me was I was in a house for 30 years up in the hills, and the infrastructure, not of the house but of the hills, was falling apart. The sewage, and there were floods, and so when it came up, when the market came back, I sold it, and in downsizing to move into a condo, I got rid of a lot of stuff, and the first downsizing happens when you stage the house, because nobody wants to see your crap. And so the broker brings the stager in and says, and she goes with blue tags and says, lose this, we'll keep this, we'll keep that, lose all the other shit. And then she comes up with a truck full of her stuff from Christ and Pier 1.
Yeah.
And so because people want an idea of what it will look like with some furniture, because an empty room scares them.
Yeah.
But they don't want to see your furniture, or they get caught up in what you, especially if you're a well-known person, they get caught up in what they're seeing, and something always disappears during those open houses. Anyway, so it was a great opportunity to get rid of all of that shit. And of course, the shit that I thought I had to have, I put in the storage facility. This was the stuff I knew I could not live without, which I have managed to live without for 10 years. And I would like now to go down to to that storage facility and have a small insurance fire. But actually, if I can't do that, once we're not afraid of being in small rooms with no circulating air, I'll go down there and I'll actually there are a few items I could pull out of there, but so this is your future, I'm telling you. Just keep collecting, and then sooner or later you'll say, "Well, Adam Sandler's good. What am I going to do? Donate them someplace." The theater collection at Ohio State has all of where I graduated, and they started while I was there, not because of me, because of one of the visiting professors who was a playwright who started it. But I give everything, old Oscar scripts and stuff. I keep some stuff that work for charities for silent auctions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other stuff I just I give to them because they are keeping an archive. So they would be delighted to have a whole pile of Adam Sandler scripts.
Yeah.
Keep them in mind.
I gave one to my mom, and the one I gave to her was actually signed by Quentin Tarantino, one of the ones that were there, and it was a rarity because nothing else had any signatures or anything on it, because I went through every single one to check. And
which one? What movie was it?
Believe it or not, it was Little Nicky with Adam Sandler. His name was just right across it.
Oh, Little Nicky, yeah.
Yeah. And I looked at it and I go, no, this no. So then
did he write Little Nicky? Did Quentin write it?
He was part of it, yeah, from what I read. And so
I don't know.
I started looking up what his signature looked like and everything. And I'm sitting there and I'm going,
yeah.
Oh, Mom, I know you're a fan. Here you go. Happy birthday.
Here you are, Mom.
Yeah, that's what happened with it. But they're all in a room just chilling, stacked on top of each other. Brought up a lot of charity work, especially with AIDS, the GLBTQ community and everything. Before I get into any of that, I have a gay brother, so I want to thank you for all the work that you've done with all of that to be able to make it so he can live what I would consider a normal life.
Yes, well, yeah.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, and
happy to have done it.
Can you tell fans out there just some of the charities and stuff that you've worked with? Because I know you've worked with GLAAD and Outfest.
I have done all of them. They when you grow up Jewish, you learn that everybody, a lot of people hate you. Nobody's going to help you, and you have to do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been what the Jews have been doing. That's one of the mottos. The other motto is every Jewish holiday can be explained in 3 sentences. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat.
Okay.
So I thought this applies pretty well to the gay community too. We have to take care of ourselves and of our own. So when the opportunity arose, there was a gay liberation movement in the early 70s, and I was involved in that. But when AIDS came in, which was not too long after, all that activism shifted to self-preservation, to remediation. And since the government wasn't going to step in, and it was sort of a pariah, and I was in show business, and I said, what can we do? And what we do in show business is we throw benefits and we raise money to facilitate other things that can happen around the disease. So that's what I started doing. I started organizing benefits for what organizations were around at the time, which was, they were all volunteer organizations. When the disease got a bit more mainstream after Rock Hudson, professionals stepped in. You know, guy from Cerebral Palsy moved in and took over a charity because they were the pros at doing this stuff. So at the beginning, in order to get these benefits going, I would trade off with people. I would say, look, I will write your benefit for your organization if you will do this benefit. And so I got a lot of people that way. And I also got intimate with most of the major diseases. I wound up having to write about all of them. And because at the beginning, nobody would do AIDS benefits. Bette Midler and Madonna and Nell Carter and Joan Rivers. And they all were involved in it because they'd had a lot of loss. Nell's brother was actually one of the first to go. And Madonna's whole creative team was decimated. And Bette, our collaborator, died, and a lot of those people. So we were affected, and it moved into the more general show business community. But so I've done all of those things, and so a lot of Jewish things, and a lot of gay things, and a lot of other things that I did because I'm Jewish and gay, and I bargained that to get what I needed, and so I did that. So I mean, like, you know, hey, Big Sisters of LA, I'm your guy. I wrote that one for years. And,
oh wow!
A lot of the charity business is, you know, huge, and it's a business.
Yeah,
and there are people who make a lot of money, and they raise a lot of money, and you know, and all the eternal questions last. Like, well, why haven't you cured it yet? It's 50 years of fundraisers. Why are you no closer? But you know, you don't want to think those thoughts because they don't put anything positive into the universe. So,
especially right now with everything that's going on with this whole COVID thing, and you know, the other, you know, stuff that we have going on with, you know, Black Lives Matter, people wanting to fund the police, politics.
I know it's a lot of stuff.
You know,
Well, you know, it's a perfect storm. I mean, George Floyd happened when everybody was cooped up at home and watching TV, and it was like a pressure cooker that finally everything crystallized. It became suddenly everybody said, no, enough of this. That video was so obvious that you couldn't turn away from it.
Yeah.
And so it created a movement instantly, and it wouldn't have happened as strongly as it happened had not so many people been available to chew on it.
Yeah.
Metaphorically. So, but it's not a bad thing. This is not a bad thing.
Have you been working on anything now while you've been, you know?
I wrote a musical on a PPP from a theater. How do you like that?
Ooh.
And they want to do it, and we're just waiting to see if theater is ever going to come back. Well, how late in the century theater will finally return.
Yeah,
because it's kind of like the last thing, because it's you know, it's intimate, and people will be afraid because it's such close quarters, and you know, the audience for a lot of things skews older, and they're particularly afraid. And also, there's an economic model that hasn't been gauged yet. What happens when you have a 1,000-seat theater that now only seats 500?
Yeah.
Does everybody have to take a rollback in salaries, and the prices have to go up? How does that work out? And no one has really had the opportunity to do that because no one is in a hurry to go. I think once people start going to the movies and maybe sporting events, that they will be more comfortable with being out and in crowds. But it still won't change. I mean, Hamilton plays to 1,100 people a night, and it's going to be reduced to 500. They ain't going to be having $3 million weeks anymore in grosses.
Yeah.
Because if they have $1.5 million, well, poor them. But I mean, that was a poor example.
That's okay. Well, it is what it is.
I heard somebody say that.
Yeah.
just before I hurled an orange at the TV to make him more orange.
I mean, ironic. I am in orange.
You are, yes. He has. That's one color he won't co-opt. He doesn't want to admit to anything. No.
Yeah.
And you can see the makeup line, but no.
Oh yeah, no, it's real though. It's real. That's his real tan. That's
the hair is real, like the hair, which is the world's greatest comb over.
No, it's real.
Well, you're real.
Or like when the wind hits it and it all.
Look at him from the back of the side, and you'll see how artfully.
Oh yeah, how like it'll go like that on him and everything.
Eddie and the Cruisers.
I got to ask one thing, and I'm sure you've done a lot of interviews and everything like that. Has anyone ever asked you to take a virtual selfie with them?
Yeah, but I don't know how you do it, but you mean just like here, just off these screens?
Yeah, like here, let's try it out right now. Like doing it like
Ooh, look at that hair.
Like, see if I can. There we go, like this. 1, 2, 3. Hey.
No one's ever done it like that. That's great.
Really? Oh, hey, I'm glad I'm the first. I'm excited for that then.
I commend you.
Thank you. Bruce, can I ask where people can, if you have any social media, people can find you at?
I'm on Facebook, and there are several of me on Facebook apparently, but I'm wearing a T-shirt. I think it says something like, thank you for understanding at this difficult time, or please take me to a hospital, something like that. And it's, or wegotbruce.com, which is a fan website that, with a guy in Nashville who like is a clearinghouse for stuff and always knows what I'm doing and posts everything that he finds. Wegotbruce.com. And it's off of the movie that they made about me 20 years ago called Get Bruce, which was about all these people I write for. And we're doing a sequel, Had Bruce, with a much larger cast.
Ooh.
Harvey Weinstein produced that movie, by the way.
Ooh.
And he never laid a hand on me. Hashtag, why not me? Blonde, open bathrobe. I was a bad.
Harvey, what are you doing, man? Come on. No. Bruce, I want to thank you.
My pleasure.
For coming on.
Thank you so much.
This was amazing, and it was a great experience for me. I hope that I can have you come back on again at some point.
Sure.
Relive these memories and laugh.
Maybe I'll have something to plug.
Yeah.
If this thing ever ends.
Yeah, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your night. I'll keep in touch with you if that's okay. Sure. I'd like to have you on again, and I just really want to thank you because this was a great experience. Cool. And again, all the charity work you did when it comes to AIDS in the gay community. Like I said, I got a gay brother, so thank you. Because that he can live.
Is he in Oswego, that hotbed of gay activity?
Yeah, he's in Oswego too. He actually lives with me, believe it or not.
Ah, okay.
He actually lives with me.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I'll see him. I'll see him on Grindr. I can't do that. It's like I'm too famous. They go, it's not really you, is it? Or or they'll say, "Oh my God, you're so desperate. It's you." You know, it's like,
Oh.
it's okay. I have a feeling I've saved myself a lot of heartache. Not to mention shots.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Well, give him my best, and
I will. Thank
everybody
you.
out there in Walkerland.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It was great meeting you, even though it's virtual. Great time speaking with you. Again, have a great day, and
Thank
I'll
you.
be in touch.
All right. Be well. Be
Bye.
happy. Bye.
Have a good one.